We're diving into Thena today.
Right.
It's this new decentralized trading hub, creating a bit of buzz
Oh, yeah.
lately. And we've got this report here from Binance Research. They're trying to do some pretty interesting things over there.
Right.
Like, kind of like imagine a stock exchange.
Yeah.
But instead of being run by like a big institution,
Mm-hmm.
it's all run by code
Yeah.
and community consensus. That's that DeFi magic, right?
Exactly. And one of the things that I think makes Thena so interesting
Yeah.
is how it tackles this cold start problem.
Oh, interesting.
New crypto projects, it's hard to get enough traders, enough liquidity.
Right? Makes sense.
Like, early on, it's kind of like opening a shop in a ghost town. You need those customers right
You gotta
away.
have the people.
Yeah, you got other people, and Thena's got some pretty clever incentives.
Okay, so walk me through it. How does
Uh,
that work? How do they do that? What are the incentives?
Well, it all revolves around their native token, the HE. Three-pronged approach, really.
Okay.
First, the fuels liquidity.
Uh-huh.
So users add funds to the trading pools. That basically ensures there's enough buying and selling power.
Right.
They get rewarded with the tokens for doing that.
So they're incentivized to keep the pool like full?
Yeah. It encourages people to, keep those pools stocked.
Okay. Even for the smaller tokens.
Even for the lesser known, yep.
Okay, got it. So that's one role of the E. What's the second one?
So governance.
Oh.
Holders of the E can lock up their tokens to gain VETH.
That.
Yeah. It's kind of like gaining voting rights in a company.
Oh, I see. Okay.
The longer you lock, the more VETH you accumulate, and the more, say, you have in the platform's future, how it evolves.
It's like they're rewarding that commitment, long-term commitment.
Exactly.
Okay. And the third part, the third role of the E.
Revenue sharing.
Ooh.
Okay. So Thena generates revenue, trading fees, and, other activities on the platform.
Right.
Portion of that goes right back to the VIT table holder.
So they get to share in the success.
Exactly. Not just a voice, but they share in the success of the platform as well.
That's a pretty sweet deal. So you've got liquidity, governance, and you can potentially earn passive income.
Yeah.
Through revenue sharing.
That's right.
Cool. So let's talk about the trading itself.
Sure.
What can you actually do on this platform?
So Thena, it offers a pretty comprehensive set of tools.
Okay.
You've got, standard spot trading, buy, sell crypto at the current price.
Right.
But they also have futures trading,
Uh-huh.
which allows, more seasoned traders to kind of speculate on those future price movements.
Okay.
Maybe potentially amplifying their gains.
Right. Or losses.
Well, yeah, of course. There's always that risk.
Got to mention the risk.
Absolutely.
So they're really catering to like, both the casual traders
Right.
and then those looking for, more advanced stuff.
Yep, exactly. But what about, like, for those of us who want to get, like, really into the DeFi side of things? I saw something about concentrated liquidity. What's that all about?
Right. So concentrated liquidity is more of an advanced feature.
Okay.
It's really for those liquidity providers.
Okay.
And it allows them to really fine-tune where they provide that liquidity.
Uh-huh.
So within a specific price range.
Okay.
And this can actually be more capital efficient
Oh.
and potentially lead to higher returns
Okay.
compared to those traditional liquidity pools. But, it is something you want to research.
Right. You want to know what you're getting into.
You want to know what you're getting into, yeah,
A little more risk, but potentially more reward.
essentially.
And then I also saw they have automated liquidity management.
Yeah,
Tell me that makes things easier.
it does.
Okay, good.
So automated liquidity management, ALM for short, helps automate some of those complexities of providing liquidity.
Okay.
It's like having a robo-advisor for your liquidity pool. Nice.
It just constantly adjusts, optimizes based on market conditions.
So you don't have to.
Yeah, so you don't have to.
That's what we like to hear. Awesome. I love when DeFi platforms make things more user-friendly.
Me too.
And of course, we can't forget about yield farming.
You know it.
Gotta have yield farming.
No DeFi platform would be complete without it.
Right, right. So they have yield farming opportunities, right?
Yeah, various opportunities.
For earning passive income.
Passive income, exactly. Providing liquidity to different pools. But they also have some unique features,
Like what?
like their voting incentives marketplace.
I saw that.
Yeah.
I was curious about that. Can you break that down for me?
Sure. Imagine it like a billboard.
Yeah.
Where projects can, advertise their tokens, attract more users to provide liquidity.
So it's like campaigning, basically.
Yeah.
For the liquidity.
Exactly. Campaigning for more liquidity. And they offer the rewards to those who support them. The more votes a project gets, the more DD is allocated to their pool.
So it's a way to help new projects, like
Yeah.
get off the ground.
Yeah, exactly. It's community driven, right?
Yeah. Very cool. And then they have trading competitions too, right? Just to,
Exactly. A little bit of fun,
make things interesting.
a little gamification.
Yeah.
But, don't let the fun fool you. Thena's attracting some serious players too.
Really?
Yeah. They've developed tailored solutions for institutional investors,
Wow. Okay.
like hedge funds, market makers.
Interesting. So they're being taken seriously by, the traditional financial world.
Yeah, it seems so.
Okay, well, let's talk about the Elite token itself.
Sure. Yeah.
The token supply.
Yeah.
I'm always interested in how these are distributed. What can you tell me about that?
Well, the Binance Research Report has some key numbers here.
Okay.
First, fixed maximum supply of the tokens.
Okay.
326,120,291 to be exact.
Okay, so they're keeping it limited.
Yeah, helps control inflation, right?
Right.
And, in theory, maintain the token's value over time.
Good.
When Thena lists on Binance, about 71.4% of the total tokens will be in circulation.
Okay,
So roughly 233,000 DHE.
got it.
And they're also doing an airdrop to, reward those early supporters.
Always a good thing. Airdrops are fun, but what about the rest of it? Like, where do all the tokens go? What's the breakdown?
So the vast majority, 76.14%, are allocated to what they call emissions.
Emissions.
Yeah. Means they'll be distributed gradually over
Yeah.
time as rewards to users who participate on the platform.
Gotcha.
Providing liquidity, voting on governance proposals, that sort of thing.
Okay, so it's like a continuous reward system.
This keeps the ecosystem going.
I like it.
Yeah. The rest of the tokens, 8.13% for a general airdrop,
Okay.
6.3% for ecosystem development,
Uh-huh.
6.67% specifically for Binance users, those holding certain assets, 2.76% for the team behind Thena, and a tiny little fraction for other initiatives.
Okay, so they've got a pretty well-defined,
Yeah, distribution strategy.
distribution strategy.
Mhm.
But you mentioned earlier, they're attracting institutional investors.
Yeah.
Is this like a sign that DeFi is finally?
I think it's a strong indicator.
Yeah.
For a long time, DeFi was kind of like this little niche corner of the
Okay.
crypto world, but platforms like Thena with their sophisticated features and institutional grade solutions, I think they're starting to bridge that gap
Yeah.
between traditional finance and DeFi.
That's really interesting. But with all this complexity,
Yeah.
all these moving parts, do you think Thena is still accessible to the average,
That's a good question.
crypto enthusiast, or is it becoming more of a platform for the big players?
I think Thena does a pretty good job
Oh, yeah.
of balancing those two audiences.
Oh.
Yes, they have advanced features like, concentrated liquidity, institutional solutions, but they also have a really simple user-friendly interface
Right.
for just basic trading and yield farming. Plus their educational resources and documentation are pretty solid.
So even if you're totally new to DeFi,
Yeah,
you can still jump in and start exploring and not be completely lost.
exactly. And don't forget about the airdrop.
Right.
That's a great way to kind of, dip your toes in.
Right. Get your feet wet.
Get your feet wet. Start earning some D while you learn the ropes.
Yeah. Speaking of learning, I'm curious about this V33 governance model. You mentioned that earlier.
Yeah.
Sounds kind of intimidating. Can you break it down for us?
Sure. It's actually a pretty clever system. It's inspired by the Curve finance model.
Okay.
By locking your tokens, you gain VET.
Yeah.
Gives you voting rights, share of the platform's revenue.
Okay.
The 3-3
Yeah.
part just means that both your voting power and your rewards increase the longer you lock your tokens, up to a maximum of 3 years.
Oh, okay. So the more committed you are,
Exactly.
the more influence and rewards you have.
Those are skin in the game, yeah.
Yeah, incentivizes that long-term participation.
Yeah, sense of ownership
Within
within the community.
Exactly. It's like becoming a shareholder,
Yeah,
right? You're invested in the future
Exactly.
of the platform. But let's shift gears for a second and talk about the risks,
Sure,
because every investment has risks.
of course.
What should potential Thena users, be aware of?
You're right. No investment is risk-free
Right.
and DeFi. No exception. With any DeFi platform, there's smart contract risk.
Okay.
Now, Thena has been audited
Right.
by reputable firms, but there's always a possibility, right, of vulnerabilities
Yeah,
being exploited.
of course, yeah.
So it's really important to research, understand the platform's security measures, understand the potential risks before you put any money in.
Yeah. So do your own research.
Ways always
Due diligence.
Due diligence is key.
Like with any crypto venture, what other risks?
Well, there's market risk, obviously.
Right.
The value of like any cryptocurrency, it's subject to market fluctuations,
Sure.
influenced by things like overall sentiment, regulatory changes, even competition from other DeFi platforms.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's true for anything.
Exactly.
But especially, in the crypto world where things can move so fast.
Yeah, absolutely. Things change quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. Are there any other risks, like specific to DeFi?
So we should also consider impermanent loss,
Okay.
which is a risk for liquidity providers.
Okay.
When you provide liquidity to a trading pool, the ratio of your assets can change as people trade.
Right.
And this can potentially lead to a loss compared to if you had just held those assets individually.
Got it. So, understand how liquidity providing works and the potential for impermanent loss
Right.
before you jump in. Any other words of wisdom for our listeners as we kind of start to wrap up our Thena deep dive here?
I think the key takeaway is that Thena represents this new wave of DeFi platforms.
Wow.
They're offering advanced features, attracting institutional interest, building a really strong community.
Yeah.
Through these innovative incentive mechanisms.
Yeah.
It's an exciting space to watch.
Yeah.
But as with any investment, do your own research, understand the risks involved,
Right.
and never invest more than you can afford to lose.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
Those are words to live by in the crypto world. I really appreciate your insights, your ability to explain all this complex stuff, like in a way that I think everyone can understand.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. But before we let you go, I have one final question.
Okay.
I've talked a lot about all the great things Thena offers, but what about the competition? Are there any other platforms out there doing similar things? How does Thena stack up?
That's an excellent question. Thena is not operating in a vacuum.
Right.
There are lots of other decentralized exchanges, DeFi protocols, vying for users for liquidity. Some offer similar features. Spot and futures trading, yield farming, governance tokens.
Right.
Others focus on, specific niches, like decentralized derivatives or lending and borrowing. It's a competitive landscape.
For sure. So what do you think sets Thena apart? What are their, key advantages?
From what I've seen, their focus on solving that cold start problem is unique. It addresses a real challenge for new crypto projects.
Yeah.
Their incentive mechanisms, like that V33 model, the voting incentives marketplace, they seem particularly effective at attracting liquidity and helping new tokens get off the ground.
So they're not just another exchange.
Right.
They're actively working to grow the entire DeFi ecosystem.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I like that. Anything else that stands out to you?
Their commitment to institutional solutions is also notable.
Okay.
By catering to the larger players. They're bridging that gap between traditional finance and DeFi, which I think could, really accelerate mainstream adoption.
Interesting. It sounds like they're well positioned.
They seem to be.
Yeah. But competition is good, right?
Yeah.
It drives innovation.
Absolutely.
It benefits the users in the end.
Yeah, a healthy competitive landscape pushes platforms to improve their offerings, enhance security, provide better user experiences.
Yeah.
And in the end, it's the users who win, right?
Yeah, exactly.
As platforms compete for their attention and their loyalty.
Well said. Well, I'm definitely intrigued by Thena.
Yeah.
And excited to see how they continue to evolve and shape the DeFi landscape. This has been such an eye-opening deep dive. We've covered so much from the basics of what Thena is and how it works to, the tokenomics, the governance model.
Right.
I feel like I've gone from Thena novice to, well, maybe not expert.
You're on your way. You're getting there.
But definitely more informed.
That's what we like to hear.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I'm excited to see where this all leads. I mean, is Thena the future of finance? I don't know.
Maybe, maybe not.
Maybe not. But it's definitely pushing the boundaries, challenging the traditional ways we think about trading and investing
It is. It is.
and even governance, right?
I agree. I think Thena and the broader DeFi movement
Yeah.
really represent this shift in power dynamics.
Mhm.
Empowering individuals,
Yeah.
fostering community ownership, promoting transparency,
Right.
accessibility in the financial world. And whether or not Thena becomes the dominant platform,
Yeah.
it's clear that these principles are here to stay.
Yeah.
And that's pretty remarkable.
It really is. And for anyone listening who's, feeling inspired to learn more, we'll be sure to include links to the Binance Research Report and other resources in the show notes.
Great.
But before we wrap up, I want to kind of circle back to something you mentioned earlier, which is Thena's potential impact on a global scale.
Hmm.
This idea that financial services could become accessible to
Yeah.
anyone
Right.
with an internet connection,
Yeah.
regardless of location, background. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's one of the most compelling aspects of DeFi. Imagine a world where, access to financial tools and opportunities isn't limited by
Yeah.
geography or those traditional barriers.
Right.
That's a powerful vision,
Yeah.
and platforms like Thena are taking concrete steps
Yeah.
to make that a reality.
Yeah. It's almost like we're witnessing the early stages of a financial revolution.
I think that's a fair assessment.
Yeah.
Of course, there are challenges ahead, regulatory hurdles, technological advancements,
Oh,
but
wow.
but the potential is there,
Yeah.
and the momentum is building.
For sure. It's an exciting time to be involved in this space. But as we've discussed, you know, approach it with a healthy dose of caution.
Absolutely.
Do your own research, understand the risks.
Always, always.
Yeah. This deep dive has given me a lot to think about,
Good.
and I'm sure our listeners feel the same way. Any final words of wisdom before we sign off?
Just remember the crypto world. It's constantly evolving. Stay curious, stay informed, and never stop learning. And who knows, maybe one day we'll look back at these early days of DeFi
Right.
and just marvel at how far we've come.
Yeah, I have a feeling we will. Well, thanks for joining me on this deep dive into Thena.
It was my pleasure.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep pushing the boundaries
Yes.
of what's possible in the world of finance.
And never stop asking questions. Yeah, I agree. I think Thena and the broader DeFi movement, it really represents this shift in power dynamics,
Yeah.
empowering individuals, fostering community ownership, promoting transparency,
Right.
accessibility in the financial world. And whether or not Thena becomes like the dominant platform,
Right.
it's clear that these principles they're here to stay.
Yeah.
And that's pretty remarkable.
It really is. And for anyone listening who's feeling, inspired to learn more, we'll be sure to include links to the Binance Research Report and other resources in the show notes. But before we wrap up, I want to kind of circle back to something you mentioned earlier, which is Thena's potential impact on a global scale.
Mm-hmm.
This idea that financial services could become accessible to anyone with an internet connection,
Right.
regardless of location, background.
Right.
What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's one of the most compelling aspects of DeFi. Imagine a world where access to financial tools and opportunities isn't limited by, geography
Right.
or those traditional barriers.
Right.
That's a powerful vision.
Yeah.
And platforms like Thena are taking concrete steps to make that vision a reality.
Yeah. It's almost like we're witnessing the early stages of a financial revolution.
I think that's a fair assessment.
Yeah.
Of course, there are challenges ahead.
Right.
Regulatory hurdles, technological advancements to be made, but the potential is there, and the momentum is building.
For sure. It's an exciting time to be involved in this space. But as we've discussed, approach it with a healthy dose of caution.
Absolutely.
Do your own research. Understand the risks.
Always, always.
Yeah. This deep dive has given me a lot to think about. And I'm sure our listeners feel the same way. Any final words of wisdom before we sign off?
Just remember, the crypto world, it's constantly evolving. Stay curious, stay informed, and never stop learning. And who knows, maybe one day we'll look back at these early days of DeFi and just marvel at how far we've come.
Yeah. I have a feeling we will. Well, thanks for joining me on this deep dive into Thena.
It was my pleasure.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep pushing the boundaries
Yes.
of what's possible in the world of finance.
And never stop asking questions.
Excellent advice. And on that note, we'll wrap things up here. Thanks for tuning into this deep dive into Thena. We'll catch you next time.